Fáilte to the Mórrígan Insider's Guide. We are going to do a very basic beginner's class here, and even for people who are not beginners, hopefully you'll find something of use in here, because as we'll see, there is quite a bit of misinformation, and if you've been around the Mórrígan, especially on like YouTube or various blog posts and that, or even some books, unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation around about the Mórrígan and her sisters, and we will get some real information out there. That is actually the well, one of the missions that she has me on for a very long time, is to try and educate people with genuine information from the native Irish traditions. So that's why we're all here, you and I and everybody else, and we can get going on that. So myself, if you are not familiar with me or my work or anything else about me, then I'm obviously here in Ireland, if you may be able to tell from the accent. I am Lora can't even start again. Lora O'Brien, got my own name right. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been consciously pagan for about 25 years, but growing up here in Ireland, it's in the blood and the bones of us, really, you know, and the traditions and the lore and the mythology and everything like is spoon-fed to us in school and in our families and in our stories and in our culture. And it's everywhere. We're eating, sleeping and breathing it. And a lot of that is unconsciously, which is why I say I've been consciously practicing paganism for 25 years at this point. And I've been a priest of the Mórrígan for pushing 15 of those now. Okay. So with everything that I've done, I actually just refer to myself as three, because that really connects me to the magic and the energy of Ireland and of my ancestors and of the land and the spirits and the other world and all of that. And it's a very small, simple word that encompasses a lot for me. So it's also the root of the word Druid. But Druid these days, neo-paganism has kind of taken it over a little bit, and I'm just more comfortable with expressing it in my native tongue, which is three. So why are we here? Never mind who I am. Who is the Mórrígan? So you'll hear me pronounce it Mórrígan, which is the anglicised version, or Mórrígan, which is the Irish version. And we'll get into all that and translations and all the rest of it shortly. So we are dealing with an Irish deity, and there's a lot of crossover in neo-pagan culture with, you know, the word Celtic is bandied about a lot and used by people who maybe don't really understand the academic or scholarly context where it was first kind of coined to describe, to kind of put a common label on a disparate collection of tribes and cultures that had some commonalities, usually with language or art, some regional, but primarily it was about the cultures and the societies of these varied tribal people from all over mainland Europe and the Celtic Isles, as I like to call them, here in Ireland and Britain. So we have this word that is a kind of a general catch-all term that is a little bit misunderstood. So I do use it sometimes. I use it in the proper context to describe, again, a collection of people, tribes, countries, cultures, societies with some commonalities. But we are dealing with the Mórrígan, who is specifically Irish. And we do have the Bive appearing in Europe, and Gaelic. Oh my goodness. It is quite late here, and I've been working since 8 o'clock this morning, so please forgive me stumbling over my words. I don't edit my videos, and really what you see is what you get. So I'm not here kind of polished, presenting you some kind of package. This is just me telling you what I know. Okay, so we are dealing with an Irish deity. The Mórrígan generally appears as female, specifically female, even when in animal form, which she shapeshifts through various of the texts, whether it's a young woman, an old woman. The birds that she appears on are not specifically female, as far as I know, but pretty much everything else is. And that I kind of pull out because it's interesting in that she seems to be concerned with the kind of the female things, if you like, or in my lived experience of her and working and dealing with people who are called to work with her, she does generally seem to be more interested in women than in men. And I use women and men as, you know, anybody who identifies as women and anybody who identifies as men. But ultimately, the Mórrígan is a shapeshifter and it's kind of gender irrelevant. So it is interesting that there's that kind of specification, and it really does kind of speak to me of a particular concern with the themes and the problems or issues that are particular to women. And we see this very clearly in Macha, who is, we'll get to that in a few minutes. Macha would be, out of all of them, Macha would be specifically concerned with pregnancy, childbirth, all that kind of stuff. So we do have that going on. And the Mórrígan on Mórrígan is a name. It's used variously through the text as a name, as a title, as a noun. And when we are looking at source material, we actually have to be really careful. We have to look at the context for how the Mórrígan is being used, how the various references to her, to her sisters, to her her nature. I mean, she's glossed in one source as, you know, as in like defined as Lamia, which is like a biblical demon. So just because something is old and written down, it doesn't mean that it's, you know, 100% accurate. There's a lot of contradiction in the texts, and it often seems to me that, like, the more I look into her, the less I understand her from the source material. So hence why I'm doing free classes like this, to try and at least give the basics and the generalities. Okay, so there is a lot of debate over what the name means, and it's Great Queen or Phantom Queen, depending on whether there's a father or not. The father is the accent over the O, so it's M-O, father or. And more without an accent can be translated as phantom, and more with an accent with a father can be translated as great, or not so much large as in physically big, but like great as in immense and amazing, right? So the Mórrígan is, like, a lot of people are kind of like, well, what's she a goddess of? And I have put this in here because it is something that kind of we really seem to need to know. But I do want to kind of put a caveat in here, because in the Irish pantheon, there isn't really like a god of X and a goddess of Y, and these like kind of strict roles and functions that we see in maybe some different like the classical Greek or Roman or whatever, because what we have is this very, very mixed bag of deities who kind of turn their hand to a bit of everything and a bit of anything. So like an example of that would be Oma, who is the one of the Tuatha Dé Danann gods who invented the Om script, the ancient Irish script. And there's more on my blog about Om if you want to go and have a look at that after class. But he is this, you know, he's this academic effectively, right? So he's got this like this writing and this very kind of cerebral thing going on, but he's also like the champion of the Tuatha Dé Danann, or one of the champions of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So that's the physical warrior aspect as well. So they really are multifaceted deities, and the Mórrígan is no exception. She is one of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Ultimately, I think she is a goddess of prophecy, and you will see a lot of references about battle or war. But again, I really want to kind of, now all battle, all war is bloody and it's messy and it's deadly. But the context for the society and the culture that the Mórrígan was first formed in, that she would have been, you know, overseeing these battles and these wars, is different to, it's not this like massive armies going out and fighting each other's. It was on a much kind of smaller scale. It's not that you didn't have big battles, but generally like the battles were maybe like one hero fighting another hero, you know, and they would send forth their champions, and that was actually very common. It's well attested in the source material. So the idea is, and there was like honorable combat, and it was very kind of strategic, and there was like, now not that modern war is not strategic, of course it is, it has to be, but it just is a different kind of a different context than we would be used to. So it's really important for us to remember that when we hear things like battle and war, or her being called, like her name is relation to nightmares or something like that, it's really important to remember that those things meant different things when those names were being given, or those associations were being given or taken on by the deity. So she's very much about, you know, prophecy about the war. So it's not just like if there's a battle coming or a war coming, she's kind of given these prophecy poems, which are, you know, these massive a cross between like a divination prediction and, you know, dire warnings, or prophesying victory, or, you know, it's just there's a whole kind of mixed bag in there for the options and the outcomes, and it's like she can kind of see all of it. Like there's very positive and very negative in like completely different poems. So that's just one example. But she also then is involved in, she's a goddess of change, and particularly instigation of change. So in the text she goes in and she you know, she has a little word in the ear of a bull, or she'll actually bring a cow from the other world to get in calf, which then like leads on to this big epic battle later on down the road, right? So she's in there kind of forming these little changes and kind of making these offers and building relationships and doing all these things and kind of strategizing way before anybody else can see any of this coming, right? So that's a really important aspect that we have to kind of try and wrap our heads around when we're dealing with her. Big picture, right? Big picture stuff. She's all about the big picture. And that includes the sovereignty, and whether she is, she's very associated with water, bodies of water in various parts of her stories. And that's kind of a common theme. But her sovereignty aspect, I feel, again, it's like, it's not so much connected to the land, it's maybe sovereignty of the other world, but also sovereignty of the people and the communities and the tribes within the land. So it's like, again, she has this kind of big picture view of sovereignty, where some of the deities who are connected to sovereignty, like Macha actually, is very particularly concerned with Ulster, with Aon Macha, her royal site, is very kind of rooted in the land. The Mórrígan is really not, like, she does have sites associated with her, which we'll look at briefly. And there's there are places, but they're kind of like thin places where the other world is connected. So it's less rooted sovereignty and more kind of, again, big picture machinations, you know, moving around and getting things done. So we look at her names. So in modern Irish, when we see, I've explained already, more can mean great or phantom. And the end part of her name then, Rian, it means queen or noble lady, basically, and it's very much kind of an honorific, you know, built in. There are two spellings, so we have that or I father O N, or I father O G H A I N, and there's various spellings of both modern Irish and Old Irish. The bottom there, Regan, is Old Irish. It means the same thing. And you can see they're just kind of variations on the theme. That bit doesn't really change around at all. So here's what I was talking about. We have M.O. Father, or, so that's more, which means great queen, and M.O. or without the father, which means phantom queen. And again, phantom, it's not like kind of, you know, Casper the Friendly Ghost. It's to do with the other world. It's to do with spirits. It's to do with, there's one kind of theory about her name where it might come from, the Indo-European root of Moros, I think, M-O father or O-S, which would mean the dead or the slain, so like the queen of the slaughtered, basically, which definitely fits with the theme, right? And she's not necessarily like a queen of the dead, though, or a ruler of the dead, and we don't really see that in her stories either. When she's involved in battle, it's usually as the Bive or Nevin on the actual battlefield. Sometimes she's fighting as kind of as herself, as Mórrígan, but she kind of shifts into different forms or gives her power to other beings who may or may not be her sisters. We'll talk about that. It's all very complicated. Like I said, the more you dig in, maybe the less clear it gets, but we'll try and work our way through it. So we do see her in triplicity, in various different texts, and even within the same text, as in the same manuscript, there are contradictions to which goddesses make up these three sisters, or these three Mórrígan, which is the plural, or Mórrigne. I'm not sure how it's pronounced in the Old Irish. The pronunciations that I'm giving you, by the way, are my modern school Irish. So not fluent, hands up, I'm not fluent. But I do have obviously a good grasp of the Irish language, having spoken it all my life. And my fluency kind of lets me down then with maybe grammar and vocabulary, breadth of vocabulary. But my pronunciation, there's different dialects of pronunciation even within the modern Irish in Ireland, because it is a living language, and it does change from region to region. So mine, just for the record, mine would be a very strange cross between Munster and Connacht, because sometimes I had teachers who, various years in school as I was going through, sometimes I'd have teachers who spoke with a Connacht dialect and sometimes with a Munster dialect, depending on where they had grown up or where they'd gone to school. So my pronunciation definitely goes between those two dialects. There is another one that's very common, is the Ulster dialect, or the Donegal Irish, but you won't really hear that from me. It's a slightly different tones going on. So we have Mórrigan, which is the singular form. So Mórrígan or Mórrigu could be the singular form. That changes, the U comes off and you get an N and an A, and that's what makes it plural. So don't confuse this Mórrigan with the plural. Mórrigan is the plural, okay? So Macha we've mentioned up in Ulster, and we have Bive then, and you might hear that pronounced as Bav sometimes, but Badbh is the modern Irish version of it, and it's very similar to the name Sive, which is the same but just with an S instead of a B. So that's why I pronounce it Bive, because that's how it reads to me. So we do have in brackets there Bov Jarrig, who is given as a son of the Dagda. So the Bive is the crow form, effectively, of the Mórrigan, and of all of them, the Bive seems to be the closest to her in that, when I get a sense of her shifting her form, it's into a crow, and then she is as the Bive, but the Bive is a separate entity as well. So it's all very when you're dealing with shape-shifting goddesses and, weird flowy stuff between this world and the other world, nothing is very clear. It's all very tenuous. None of it's very tied down and, clear cut. So we are dealing with all of that. So do bear that in mind. And on that note, we have Bov Jarek, who, as I said, is the son of the Dagda in some of the stories. But Bive and Bov are exactly the same words in Old Irish. And there are some theories, I know Isolde's Carmody from Story Archaeology would kind of agree with me here, that these may be the same figure. So way too long a story for this particular class, but we can get into all of that maybe in a future class. So the other names that we see associated with her are Anan or Anu, which again are the same name. And that comes from Anna, which is prosperity or wealth. That's the modern Irish. The words in brackets there are the kind of the closest I can find in modern Irish to, meanings for the names. So Anan or Anu is associated with the Pops of Anu in County Kerry and is possibly one of the names of the Mórrígan. So if we think of the Mórrígan as a title, then if she has a kind of a real name, it could be Anan because of various things that are given in the texts. But again, it is very contradictory. It is very unclear as to whether this is a separate figure, a different sister, or the Mórrígan when she's not wearing her title of Great Queen or Phantom Queen. Personally, by the way, I go with the Great Queen because that is how she has introduced herself to me. And I'm, fine with her choosing what she wants to be called or how she wants to be thought of. There is a school of thought that thinks that, or that says that the Phantom Queen is an older meaning for it. But again, scholars disagree all over the place on this, and you can honestly use whichever sense you get or whichever she tells you that she wants to be called, and that's what you're calling her, I would suggest. So Anna is prosperity in modern Irish. The Old Irish would be Ane, which is A-N-A-E, but the prosperity or wealth. And again, Anan would be much more kind of land-based, like sovereignty of the land, particularly with the association with the Pops of Anu, the two mountains in Kerry. So Fia, I think is how you would say that. I'm never 100% sure on the pronunciation for this. Fia is the modern word, which means fathom, as in a measure of distance. But it could also be Fia, which is tree or beech tree, has associations with the native Irish beech tree as well. So either of those modern terms could be the evolved version of the old Fia. See, the fada on the modern version kind of changes the pronunciation. So if I see the first one, it's Fea, but in modern Irish, it would be Fia. So that's where I'm kind of coming from with that. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody to check this with. So Nevin is, the modern version would be, the root of it would be Niv, which is poison. And Nevin is the one who kind of shrieks across the battlefield and, strikes fear into the heart of the enemies who are waiting, gathering for battle, among other things. And I'm just going to go into the pronunciation a little bit of Tua de Danann, because it is something that is grossly mispronounced in a lot of different places, including like modern, entertainment media. So I just want to kind of alert you to the emphasis that, like, Irish, it has a particular kind of a lilt to it, has a flow to it that is very important. And when the emphasis is placed on the wrong syllables, it, even if the specifics of the pronunciation changes between the dialects, it's the emphasis and the flow to it that can be quite jarring to somebody who speaks the language. So Tuatha de Danann. So the emphasis is very much Tuatha. And I hear a lot like tuatha de danann, and it just sounds wrong. So tuatha de danann is how I would pronounce that, and I'm sure there are other Irish people who maybe would pronounce it a little bit differently, but I've never really heard it significantly differ from that from an Irish person, just for the record. So we're going to take a little look at the lore stories, and of course we can't go into, what time are we at now? We're hitting half an hour, so we can't go into a lot about them, but I did just want to introduce you briefly both to the stories and to the sources, because it can be really, really confusing for anybody. You know, I want to read from the original source material, but like, where do you go? Where do you start? So you can start here. So first of all, we're dealing with 3 different story cycles. Not sure she appears in like the Fenian cycle, which would be the 4th one, or the Oceanic cycle it's sometimes called, but specifically during the mythological cycle, the Ulster cycle, and the cycle of kings, she appears in all of those stories, and she's one of the few deities who actually like comes down through all the stories and doesn't really get changed or transmuted, or like kind of she doesn't get sanitized really in any of her stories, in any of her kind of survival. So I'm just going to take us off full screen here. We are going to look at, first from the mythological cycle, we have Ca Machura. So this is the Battle of Moytura. And there are actually 2 battles of Moytura. The one that's most commonly referred to is the 2nd Battle of Moytura. So by all means do go and look up the first. She does appear in that as well. But we're just going to have a very brief look. This, if you've seen any of my other videos, I do a 21-day lore challenge, and that's free up on the Irish Pagan School. So definitely go and have a look at that if you want to kind of get more familiar with this side of things. But we're going to go to Codex, which is the online database and e-resources for Celtic studies. And this is a really fantastic site, because what it does is you can search, let me just put myself out of the way, you can search over here for the name of any text, any story, any author, actually any translator or anything like that. And what it'll pull up is again, it's a database, so it'll pull up the references for it, right? So what you have here is mythological cycle, as I mentioned, the Battle of Moytura. It's referred to as the 2nd Battle of Moytura. It gives you the manuscripts that the story appears in, which is really interesting. Usually the date that they think, so working mainly upon 9th century material. So this is like from the 800s originally, like the source language that's in it. We have prose and verse. And then down here we have primary sources, and this is where it gets really good, because what you can do is follow these. These are the kind of original translations that all of the the scholars have done. So you'll often see reference to Gray's translation of Ca Machura, or Stokes. I do prefer Gray, just personally. But you can have a look here and you can see Celt translation, and you just click that link, and I'm just going to click it and follow it, and you'll see you can get the Celt edition as a single file. And here you have Elizabeth Gray's 2nd Battle of Moytura. Goes through all the sources again, but when we scroll down, we actually have the full text here. Okay, so that's invaluable, and it's all free. So definitely do go and check that out. And like I said, you're going to get the PDF, right? So you'll have these links. These should be just clickable links within the PDF, but if you need to, you can copy and paste them into your browser, okay? And that goes for any of the links through. There'll be more links and more resources and stuff very shortly. So Ca Machura is the Tuatha De Danann fighting with the Fomorians. So in the 1st Battle of Moytura, they fight the Firbolg, and in the 2nd Battle of Moytura, they're fighting the Fomorians. And it is quite a long and complicated story, and there's a lot to it, so it's definitely worth going in. But the other good thing is, when you have this, what you can actually do, like if you're looking for the Mórrígan specifically, so this is the Tuatha De Danann coming from the 4 cities, and all those things that you hear people talking about, but you never really kind of knew where the original was. Well, the original is here, right? So, but what you can do is hit Control and F. Oh, what the hell is that? Hit Control and F, and you can just search for Mórrígan. Okay, so you can see that she's mentioned 5 times here. You got the Mórrígan said to Lou. The woman mentioned here is the Mórrígan. This is the Dagda and the Mórrígan having their tryst at the River Unshin. Further down then, yeah, we're not going through all this. Anyway, then the Tombo Cúilne is the other main one. So this is from the Ulster cycle. Okay, so again, the same thing. You can click on this and you get Van Hamel. You get the Codex and you've got the Cattle Rated Cooley. You have all the different manuscripts. See how many different manuscripts it comes off. And all of these contradict each other, by the way. They're all written by different people from different time periods. And it's just, some of them are copied off each other and there's mistakes copied over. And it's just, it is quite a mess, right? But what you do have is the primary sources down here. You have people who have gone through the trouble of actually putting it all together and you know, publishing it for you either online or in paperback books. Okay, so my suggested one for the Táin, particularly if you want a book, Thomas Kinsella's translation. Okay, so I do suggest that one. And if you want to have a look at it online, it's this one here, the Dunn. Joseph Dunn's translation, and you'll see the Irish and the English beside each other. So we're not going to click through there, but that is definitely the one that I would recommend. It's just there's different bits in different, you know, different kind of important bits that don't make it to one recension and or one translation, and it's kind of annoying. But you can have a look through all that. And if you do want to go in more depth into the Mórrígan lore, I do have a little special offer for you just here. We have the Mórrígan lore series over on the Irish Pagan School, and there's 5 sections and 6 hours. So there's 6 hours of me talking about this kind of stuff. And it's usually $115, but if you want to click this link, particularly here, you can get $60 off. So it's a really good deal. You get it for like $55, okay? So that's just a little special offer for anybody who's interested in taking a little more of a deep dive into it. So places, we are going to look at Cruachan. So Cruachan means mound, stack, or hill, right? And the reason I'm telling you that is because I'm going to present here, is because her primary site is at Rathcrohan, which is Rathcrohan in County Roscommon. Now this is a complex of sites, and it's the royal site of Connacht, which is the Western Province. And it's also the reason that I'm so closely connected to the Mórrígan and Queen Maeve, because I lived and worked there for over a decade, and I still indeed do guided tours and all the rest of it up around there. I was in a very close guardianship relationship, both professionally and personally, with the sacred sites up there. So we're going to get to the cave in a minute, but I wanted to give an honorary mention to Bives Mountain, which is Slieve Bona or Slieve Bon in just outside Strokestown, which is Strokestown and then Tulsk and then Rathcrohan. So you'll see it, if you look at it on a map, you'll see Strokestown, and Slieve Bon is Bives Mountain. So I mentioned the cave, and I remember like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, it was my first teaching trip to Italy, and I was at this like Druid conference in Italy, and didn't speak a word of the language, and you know, so I was kind of listening to the Italian going on around me. We were sitting at a table after lunch, and somebody came up to me and handed me a book and said, you know, is this good? Is this a good book? And I'm not going to name names, but I looked through the book, and the first thing I looked for was reference to Uvnagach, Oinagat, Rathcrohan, Cave of the Cats, because it did have a section on sites associated with Mórrígan, and couldn't find anything in the index. So eventually I found Connacht, and I was like, okay, well, obviously it's under a more general kind of Connacht term, and the only reference, when I turned to it, the only reference to it was to say that there was no sacred sites associated with the Mórrígan in Connacht. So I was very displeased about that, needless to say, because this cave is very, very much her place, okay, and is her, it's the entrance to the other world. There's a lot going on there, really is a lot, and she is a part of that. She's a very big part of that, but there's a lot going on in Rathcroghan generally. And so this is within that complex of sites. And then next county over, also in Connacht, by the way, is in County Sligo, is on Unshin, the Unshin River. And that is where herself and the Dagda get it on. And just on that note, that is the only reference to her having sex anywhere in the stories. There are various things about her having children. She is given as having a daughter with the Dagda Adair and a son, Mecha, and like, is it like 27 or 52, or I can't remember the number, but like there's this, basically this warband of the Mórrígan's children. And like, even that though, even if they were supposed to be her physical children, now my sense of that is that they are priests and priestesses and, you know, warrior priests even, who were dedicated, or just warriors who were dedicated to the Mórrígan and, you know, called themselves the children of the Mórrígan, maybe as a warband or something, you know. That's my sense of it. I have never gotten anything maternal off her. And, you know, I'm a mother myself, so I would get those vibes. If she is kind of, if she's in any, she can be matriarchal sometimes. And that's an interesting one, because, but she's matriarchal in the kind of slap you upside the head, like, you know, matriarch of a clan kind of thing, you know, and she's kind of keeping a sharp beady eye on everything. And, you know, like, that's the kind of motherly, if you have to say, you know, you're a child of the Mórrígan, if you're really feeling that, like that is the vibe that I've gotten, maybe on occasion, not with me, but with other people, and observing their relationship with her. She's not the kind of soft, nurturing kind of mother, you know. Maybe like you could kind of make a case for the blood and pain of childbirth, and I definitely have had experiences with her where there's kind of, she's tapping into that kind of vibe, absolutely. And again, you have Macha, you know, giving birth in one of the stories. You have Macha, so like there is that. But as I said, the only reference to her having sex would be this one particular incident. The idea of her as a sex goddess, I have a video of this on YouTube. I just relatively recently did it because I was just so sick of seeing it. I mean, there's a book that says, you know, Mórrígan is in the title, like Mórrígan is the goddess of sex and battle or something. There's multiple YouTube videos. There's blog posts, there's all the rest of it. And a lot of them seem to be kind of confusing her relationship with Cuchulainn as some kind of like thwarted lover. She's trying to be, so they're not even saying she's a sex goddess, they're saying she's basically a failed sex goddess because Cuchulainn rejects her. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on with Cuchulainn. Definitely don't need to get into that right now. I have opinions, okay? But suffice it to say that the Mórrígan is not a sex goddess, and she's probably not really anybody's mother in the motherly sense of the term, okay? So if you want to know more about places of power, caves as places of power, I do have a whole other class on that. Again, it's too much to go into now, but you can check it out. It's at the Irish Pagan School there. There's a direct link to it, okay? And it doesn't just go into her cave. Obviously, we covered that extensively, but it's kind of, there's a lot to that class, because it actually goes into like the initiation processes around caves and the uses of caves and the shamanic kind of, and the archaeology that we have, the evidence that we have for shamanic activities in caves in Ireland, which is pretty fascinating and is worth checking out if you're interested in following that line of study. Okay, so some more further resources that I'd like to recommend to you. Both free and paid, so, you know, stick with me here. Mórrígan on my blog, I've a couple of articles, and I'm going to be putting more up. I have been kind of leaving the blog in favor of the YouTube, so definitely check out the YouTube as well. There's a Mórrígan playlist up on my YouTube channel, and I'll send a link when I'm sending out the file for this video, or it'll be down below it or whatever. Okay, so you can check that out, but you can click this link and it goes to the category of the Mórrígan, and there's my daily practice as a Mórrígan priest. There's an article on setting up a Mórrígan altar, kind of what it means to be a priestess, prophecy, and is the Mórrígan calling? Is she building an army? Is what the hell is going on? So there's a lot up there on the blog, so definitely go and check that out if you want to follow that line of inquiry with my kind of personal relationship with her. And then if you missed it, if you missed the kind of special offer, just wanted to give you a little heads up, right? So this is a sneak preview. Now, if you're watching this down the road, sorry, if it's after the 26th of May, you have missed this. My apologies. You won't get the live show, but you'll still get the recorded version, because I'm actually doing a new version of the class. Now, if you have already taken me up on my multiple offers for taken the introduction to the Mórrígan class, then you are already in the school, you are registered for this. When the new live version comes around, you'll get automatic access to that. So that's a little bonus for people who've already signed up. If you haven't already signed up, you can do so at any time, right? And you will get the current class that's in there, as everybody has access to who is registered. But when we come to next month's class, I do a live class at the end of every single month through the Irish Pagan School. So April, we're doing native Irish trees. In May, though, it's the last Sunday of every month. So in May, we're doing the introduction to the Mórrígan. So it'll be different than same kind of basic cover, but as you can see, I'm a rambler, I'm a talker, and I do tend to go off on tangents. So there's always different information when we go through. You get the same touch points, you get the same, good solid sound foundation, resources, all the rest of it. But there'll be multiple different rambles and life experiences shared and all the rest of it. So like I said, if you sign up, you will get access to both classes. So do pop over and do that if you're interested. And I've kind of, thrown shade on a couple of books. I didn't name any names, but I have thrown shade on a couple of books, and I wanted to, give you some books that I actually do recommend. So these are ones that actually live on my desk all the time. So like, we have the Mórrígan, the Pagan Portals, the Mórrígan by Morgan Daimler. So it's the Mórrígan meeting the Great Queens, and it's a skinny little book. It's like, you could really read it in an evening, or even over a couple of evenings. Like 73 pages in it, and I do highly recommend Daimler's work. They are a fantastic researcher, translator of Old Irish. Daimler is based in Connecticut and is, from the US, as is the other author that I want to recommend to you. But all these native Irish people haven't gotten around to writing their own Mórrígan books yet. So as soon as there is one, I will recommend that to you as well, if it's any good. Not just because it's Irish, it has to be good as well. So the Book of the Great Queens. Queen, that should be, not Queens. The Book of the Great Queen by Morpheus Ravenna. And this one is a very weighty book. There are there's a lot in this book. It really is. Like, there's 466 pages in it, and it covers many faces of the Mórrígan, from ancient legends to modern devotions. And again, I highly recommend that. And Morpheus actually does classes over on her website, which is Banshee Arts. So definitely go and check that out. And is a fantastic tattoo artist as well. So if you're in the mood for a ritual tattoo, I can recommend their work. I carry Morpheus's crows on my own body. Just again, for the record. So I wanted to finish it there and say, Gora Magat, thank you very much for your time and your attention and your presence and your interest in this goddess, because, like I said, I'm charged with getting this real information out there about her. So you are helping me do that. So I want to check in the chat. Donegal Irish, yeah. So Danielle pronounces Tuatha the same, Tuatha Danann the same as me. So do we have any questions? I haven't seen any. Neil Kesh so far. We've no questions so far. Okay. So does anybody want to comment or actually what I'm going to do is open manage participants, allow participants to unmute themselves. So if anybody actually wants to speak up, you can absolutely do that. You can just unmute yourself. One at a time, please. What's my favorite thing about the Mórrígan? Good question. I'm just going to answer this question first, and then whoever's unmuted there can ask their question. So what's my favorite thing about the Mórrígan? Her unwavering nature. She's very, very focused and often focused on things that I can't see somewhere in the future or somewhere, you know, again, in the big picture. And that really appeals to me. It gives me a sense of security that somebody has my back. And this is very personal to me. And, you know, I really feel that I'm in right relationship with her because I do what I'm supposed to do. I do the work, she does the work, and everything works, basically. So I can't always see, as I said, the big picture of where we're going or where we're headed or what we're avoiding. I can't always see that. But I trust that she can. So it is odd for a shape-shifting deity. She can be focused and fluid, and you know, I do very much experience her. Like I don't, when I meet the Mórrígan in my journeys and my other world journeys, I don't meet her in a solid physical form unless it is an animal form. So I've met her as eel, I've met her as crow, I've met her as cow, and I've met her as wolf. But the only time that she appears like humanoid in physical form, she's very kind of like cloaked and shifty and shady and smoky and just very amorphous. And you know, that kind of fluidity is definitely there. So we have an open mic here. Not sure who is. Do you want to speak up there? Mystic Raven, is it?
Oh, me?
Yeah. Do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to comment how I really appreciate finding you. And I knew a little bit about the fact that she has been wrongly portrayed, and I've been meaning to go deeper into it. And I'm just so excited about, I did sign up for your course, and I really feel just a little, I know that you really represent her, and I really am very, very grateful for that.
Girl Margaret, thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah.
I work hard to, and have done for a long time, to try and do her justice, you know, because I feel that, you know, she's worth it, and she's not easy to work for, and she pushes me very hard a lot. But again, the big picture, I really feel that she's got our back. You know, we're her tua, and the people who are called to her are her tribe and her, you know, her people. And I feel like she's working hard for us as well. So I don't mind, you know, putting my shoulder to the wheel and pitching in. So that's why I'm here. So thank you for saying that.
Oh, sure.
And thank you for showing up. Like,
of course.
I really mean it, because it's so, like, it can be very, very frustrating, because what I teach is not the easiest way of going about things, you know. It would be much easier to kind of take an easy, pretty package and just, you know, pull it off the shelf and just call it done, kind of thing, you know. Walking this path with me is definitely not the easiest way, because we're figuring it out as we go along, me as much as anybody else. And you know, there is no guidebook, there's no playbook, there's no, you know, there's hints, and it's just putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle. That's what my life feels like. It's just putting together a jigsaw puzzle of all of this, all of these pieces. And you know, and some of it's intuitive, and some of it is experiential, and some of it is, you know, gathering info from other people who are also trying to do the same work. And that's a really vital part, because otherwise it's just me kind of making shit up, you know. And that's not what I'm here for. So I need all of you along, and the Mórrígan needs all of you along, for walking this kind of this right path and right relationship. And you know, now I'm not giving out charges for anybody. I'm not making contracts for the Mórrígan or anything like that. But I feel that very strongly, that, you know, that's what she needs, and that's what the world needs as well, because the modern battles are, you know, that our battlefields have shifted, and there is a real need for justice and for equality, and for people who will stand up and do the right thing, and, you know, do the hard work when it's needed, instead of just taking the easy way. And I think that's the only thing that's going to save us as humans. You know, not to be too dramatic about it, but that's what our society needs, that's what our culture needs, and the Mórrígan can definitely steer and guide that. And I feel that she has done in my life, and I've seen it countless times through over decades, you know. So I'm really, really, really pleased to have anybody who's here to kind of to do the work, you know. Lainey says, I've worked with her before. It's a tough mistress to engage with, but very rewarding. Yeah, I mean, she kind of, I feel like sometimes she has to be reminded, like, I have a contract with her that means that I get looked after, and I get the things I need to do. And it's like, you know, I'm human over here, and I have these needs, and I have to remind her sometimes that, you know, there are kind of lights to keep on, and you know, we can't just keep kind of throwing ourselves into the big picture stuff. We actually need to take care of the day-to-day stuff as well. But yeah, so it very rewarding, but yeah, it can be very, very tough. Sandra says, thank you for your lesson. You're very, very welcome. It's been brilliant. And I've also signed up for the course. Brilliant. I've loads of people signed up for the introduction to the Mórrígan. That's great. And definitely want to do the own one too. And I've worked with Ceridwen, but not with her. Ceridwen, like, obviously not the same goddess, but definitely like a similar vibe in the kind of that matriarchal kind of side of things. Now I haven't worked with Ceridwen personally, but that's definitely the vibe I've gotten off her in passing, shall we say. Danielle says, I've gone from terrified of her to intimidated by her, and then, well, I'm honestly still both, but I'm here. Yeah, Danielle, me too, to be honest. Meeting her in person and, you know, kind of face to face, it's, well, face to shape sometimes, it's it is intimidating, and it can be terrifying, but it's the work, you know. Annie says, thank you so much for your insights. I'm so ready to go on this journey. I'm very, very ready to guide you in any way and facilitate your journey in any way I possibly can. So, okay, so if we've no other questions, we could finish up there. And like I said, I will download this and upload it to the internet, where I'll give you a link so that you can rewatch it, and I will email you out the link and a PDF so that you can download that, and you have all the links that we saw in the presentation. Okay, buíochas Danielle, and Danielle, I will see you soon. Gur míle mágat freisin, Lainey, agus slán go fóil gach déanna. You're grand, April. Okay, see y'all soon. Slán.